Hi, welcome. So we're going to be focusing on reading fluency today and also, as you'll see, really throughout the whole year. It's going to become a goal for our school site. So let's just quickly talk about why did I put this big picture of this beautiful bridge over this deep canyon on our first page. It's because lots of times when people talk about reading fluency, they describe it as a bridge, like a metaphorical bridge between decoding words, which I suppose might be this area over here, and understanding text, which would be this area over here. So if we have our students, we really are focusing on them being able to decode words, read the words off of the page. And obviously, we really want them, of course, to be able to understand what they're reading. That's the ultimate goal. And if they have reading fluency, the ability to read and decode quickly and accurately and automatically, well, then they're going to have a much easier time being able to comprehend because more of their mental energy is going to be available for the purpose of comprehending. That's great. You can imagine that without this bridge, it is a long and hard road to be able to get over here, and it will obviously affect their comprehension. So let's go ahead and talk about our goal for the year. So we developed a goal at Manzanita, and our goal is that 80% of our second through eighth graders will meet their words per minute benchmarks when reading at their independent level. And of course, this is going to be measured by our end of the year reading assessments, and also we'll be tracking our progress with our baseline reading assessments, and then we'll develop a baseline with our baseline reading assessments, and we'll be tracking our progress with our trimester 1, trimester 2, and of course finally with our end of the year trimester 3 benchmarks. So here's our current data. This is data that was gathered just a couple of weeks ago at the end of trimester 2 in 2014. In second grade, 71% of students were currently meeting their fluency benchmarks. In third grade, only 66% were meeting their benchmarks. In fourth grade, 74%. In fifth grade, 70%, sixth grade, 74%, seventh grade, 72%, eighth grade, 69%, and of course, overall at Manzanita, 71% of our second through eighth graders are meeting their grade level fluency benchmarks. So actually, this is better than the sort of what they think of as the national average, but still, if fluency is so important to developing excellent comprehension, this is definitely something that we're going to be wanting to work on. So let's talk about that. Why should we focus on reading fluency? What is the meaning of those scores? So many researchers have shown that fluent readers are proficient comprehenders, and they tend to be high achievers in reading overall. This is a quote from Snow, Burns, and Griffin. They said, because the ability to obtain meaning from print depends so strongly on the development of word recognition, accuracy, and reading fluency, both the latter should be regularly assessed in the classroom, permitting timely and effective instructional response when difficulty is apparent. So that was a lot. I'm going to give you a second to just take a look at that quote, reread it to yourself, and then in a moment I'll let you turn to your partner and let them know, like, what are you understanding from this, and what do you think Snow, Burns, and Griffin are trying to tell you that would impact your instruction? So go ahead and do that now. Let's pretend that they just did that, Professor Brandon. Okay, great. We've debriefed it. Okay, great. We're going to move on. So how to identify those students who are lacking fluency? So readers who lack fluency, there are readers, they're going to read slowly, they read laboriously, they read as though they are reading word by word with little attention to phrasing, and we'll get to that this year. That'll be something we really focus on, which is how does phrasing and paying attention to phrasing when we read really help not only speed up our reading but also aid in overall comprehension. These students who lack reading fluency, they're expending so much of their cognitive effort on decoding that little is left to devote as far as attention to their comprehension. So the good news is, I always like the good news. The good news is that when we have these students that we notice are not reading fluently, there is something that we can do about it. So research has shown us that reading fluency instruction can indeed lead to improvements in fluency, improvements in comprehension, and overall reading achievement. So here's our plan for the year. This is for the 2014-2015 school year. In August, in our pre-service training, right before the school year starts, Mr. Roberts is going to get together with our reading specialist, and we're going to have a staff development meeting, and our goal is going to be screening for fluency. All the instructional aides that support students with reading at the school, and also the grades 2 through 8 reading teachers are going to attend that. In the second to third weeks of September, the grades 2 through 8 teachers will be administering their baseline reading assessments. And we know that sometimes we have our instructional aides do this, so they're responsible as well. But the point people, when we say point people, those are the people who are in charge of making sure that this happens. In the last week of September, after we have our baseline reading assessments, we're going to meet again at the Friday staff meeting, and we're going to be analyzing our assessments to determine which students need to improve their fluency. And we're going to be learning the first strategy for how to improve fluency, and that will be reader's theater. The people attending that, of course, will be our grades 2 through 8 reading teachers, and our instructional aides are not going to be coming to the baseline assessment meeting, but they will be there for the strategies. And the reason why is because we know that we're using our instructional aides during our reading program, and that they are oftentimes the people who are going to be working with these groups alongside the classroom teacher. We want to make sure they know everything we know about effective instruction. We'll meet back after that, we'll spend the next 2 months providing that explicit fluency instruction and guided practice. We're going to aim for 20 to 30 minutes a day, 3 to 4 days a week to students. And teachers are going to be deciding whether they're just going to work on, for example, reader's theater that they just learned here in strategy 1 with only their group of students that they identified need fluency practice, or they might also decide this is a practice that can benefit the entire class and we'll do it as a whole class. We'll leave that up to the teachers. Let's go on to, after that, we're going to be coming back in the first week of December. We're going to be analyzing our end of trimester 1 data, which we naturally will be doing anyway before our report cards, to determine whether especially our fluency instruction was effective. Teachers and instructional aides are going to have a chance to share how they've been implementing reader's theater. And then we're going to learn a second strategy for developing fluency, which is repeated oral reading. In the second week of December through the second week of February, right after that, the teachers and instructional aides are going to get a chance to practice what you've learned. So you might decide that you're going to continue implementing reader's theater. You can decide that you want to practice implementing repeated oral reading, whatever is going to work best in your classroom setting. But you're going to continue to provide your explicit fluency instruction. And then we're going to come back in mid-February again at our Friday staff meeting to analyze mid-trimester data. So we'll be sort of in the middle of that period. We're going to see if what we've been doing is effective. We'll, of course, if things are not effective, we'll talk about how we can change that. And teachers and instructional aides are going to share out how are they implementing strategy 1, which was reader's theater, or strategy 2, which was repeated oral reading. And then we'll learn a third strategy for developing fluency, which is partner reading. After that, the teachers again are going to have a chance to provide that fluency instruction to their students for, looks like, a couple of months, or third week of February to the last week in March, looks like about 6 weeks. And then we're going to come back again. We're going to analyze our T2 data. Was our instruction effective? We're going to go over tips and tricks to refine our current practice and become excellent teachers of fluency, make sure our students are really achieving the way that we would hope that they can achieve. And then we'll move on to our last strategy of the year, which is how to help our students develop appropriate prosody and phrasing. And the teachers, again, are going to have a couple months to provide that fluency instruction. This time you can choose from any one of those 4 strategies that we've learned throughout the school year. and then we'll be coming back the first Friday in May to analyze our mid-trimester 3 data. So far, have we achieved our goal of 80%? Remember, our goal is to have 80% of our students meeting their fluency benchmarks by the end of the school year. So, mid-trimester 3 is about 6 weeks away from the end of the school year. So it's a great time to come together and see, have we met our goal? And we'll have our reflections for the year, our feedback about how well this year's worth of instructions has worked for us, and of course our future goals. What would we like to improve on next year? What worked for us? What can we build upon? So now, Professor Brannon, we're pretending that we're here at our first a professional development session on Reader's Theater. So the teachers have come back. We know which students we are going to be working with. And here we are at our staff development session. So the teachers all know they get to learn a great strategy. Our first strategy we're going to learn for the year is Reader's Theater. And we've chosen Reader's Theater to kick off our fluency instruction because it's research proven to develop reading fluency, reading comprehension, oral language, vocabulary, listening skills, cooperation because it's a group activity. And although there are many ways to develop fluency, most of them involving some kind of repeated reading, Reader's Theater, I think, really stands out because it's a very motivating way to give students the repeated oral reading practice that they need that's been proven to improve fluency. So let's take a look. What is Reader's Theater? So Reader's Theater is repeated oral reading of scripts that are practiced and performed to an audience as a group presentation. So notice the emphasis here on it is the reading of scripts. So it's not the focus on memorizing a script. It's a little different than a play because they have their scripts in front of them, and really it's a practice of orally reading with fluency and expression and prosody. The students are relying on their voices rather than acting, costumes, or props for a successful presentation. So you can see again here the emphasis on their voice, on how they are actually reading. That's not to say that students can't include a little bit of acting, but it's minimal. It's only to enhance the script. And here are two examples of that so we can see what could be a final Reader's Theater performance. So you'll see later we'll talk about how we might begin our theater's instruction and how that would develop through a week-long lesson plan, in that this would be their final product. So this first YouTube video I'd like you to watch looks like they're high school students to me, and you can see that they have a very polished Reader's Theater performance. They've clearly practiced many times. They are performing Roald Dahl's Cinderella. And though you can see they do have their scripts in front of them, you can see that they're referring to them. They also are, and I think this is a fantastic example of what's possible if we really teach our students the power of expressive reading. So go ahead and watch that. Great, Professor Brandon, was that awesome? Did you watch it? So it's pretty great. So we would sort of talk about that right afterwards, right? And as a group, we would talk about what we liked and what we think might be possible with our kids. And since that might, I think, connect more with our older students, so our junior high kids, 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe even 5th, maybe a little 4th, can really get into that level of dramatic retelling. But this second video looks like, to me, they look like 3rd graders. They might be 2nd graders. And they are perhaps more of what we normally think of when we think of Reader's Theater. You'll see that they have their scripts in front of them. You can tell that they've clearly practiced with their group. They all know their roles. And go ahead and watch that, and we'll reflect on what you see after that. Okay, Professor Brandon, we're going to imagine people have watched and reflected, and we've talked about that video and talked about how it might look in our own classrooms, what our kids are capable of. And so, how do we implement Reader's Theater? So, the first step for us as educators is we need to choose our scripts. So, I have some pointers here. The scripts can be pre-written. In fact, at the end of the presentation, I have lots and lots of resources where you might be able to get some pre-written scripts. But we can also adapt our own. So, we can take stories that we've already been writing and create our own script based on those.